Somebody had told me a story once, and they said that if you were to take two people, someone who was addicted and someone who was not addicted, put them in a car and drive them up to the Canadian border and drop them off, that the person who wasn't addicted would soon get lost in the woods, but the person who was addicted, well, they'd make it home the same night for dinner. And the first time I ever heard that story told, it was told to a group of people who were in treatment recovering from addiction. And they would hear the story and they would laugh. They'd laugh because they knew right away that it was something that they could relate to, and they all had those similar experiences. Because when you struggle with an addiction, you must develop the ability to think quickly and to get yourself out of a bind, because that's what you need to do if you're going to survive an addiction that wants to kill you. Now, this story matters to me. It matters because my dad is the one in the story who would have made it back from the Canadian border home for dinner. I was always amazed with my dad growing up. He started multiple businesses, always took on new projects, and was always coming up with these creative solutions to problems when there was no solution to the problem. It was remarkable. But my dad also struggled with an addiction. And addiction is painful. It's painful for everyone involved. And you can only go so long with balancing an addiction with all other parts of your life until there's a breaking point. So in my family, addiction took more and more and more, and we hit that breaking point. And it was heartbreaking. But I decided that I wanted to take my life experience and the way that I had been impacted by addiction, and I decided to go into the field of alcohol and drug counseling. Now, I had the best of intentions, but I was bitter and I was hurt at the time, and I did have this expectation of what I would see when I got into the treatment environment. And based on the stereotype and stigma of addiction, you might be able to guess what you'd expect to see there too. Bad behavior, criminal histories, broken families. And yes, those elements were a part of someone's story at times. But more often than not, what I saw was people who were struggling immensely. And despite that struggle, there was something unique about them, something amazing. I came to believe that there wasn't a problem that they couldn't solve or a bind they couldn't get themselves out of. And it was incredible to watch because as someone's recovery came more and more to the forefront of their life, the values of recovery started to come out more and more. Values like honesty, integrity, gratitude, and hard work. And it was truly this incredible transformation from addiction to recovery. And the more I got to witness those incredible stories, I realized that it was such a shame that just because someone had the label of being addicted, that their potential was put into question. But I didn't stay in the field long. I decided that I wanted to take on a new challenge, so I went back for my MBA and went into business. And then I started working for a large company. And let me tell you, the culture shock was so incredibly real because I had just bounced between these two vastly different environments. And aside from the obvious differences, on one hand, I'd been working in the treatment world with individuals who were recovering from addiction, and they thought fast, they moved quickly, and many times, for better or for worse, they were not afraid to take a risk. But then in the corporate environment, it seemed to be the opposite. Slow-moving, risk-averse, meetings, committees, hang-ups, hold-ups. Many of you may have experienced that too. And so I stepped back, and in comparing these two environments, I started to wonder, what if these individuals who are recovering from addiction had something in them, their drive, their tenacity, their hustle, something that the corporate environment needed? And what if the people that we've been turning away from our companies are actually the ones that we want employed for our companies? Now, there's a man by the name of David Whitesock in South Dakota, and David's story goes as many who struggled with an addiction do. He was on his 5th DUI, he was facing prison time, and he just lost his job. But miraculously, after 10 years of struggling with addiction, David finally got sober and got well. And it was when he was in recovery that he had a mentor, someone who looked him in the eyes and told him, "David, you need to think about going to law school, because you think really quickly on your feet." And now what his mentor did in that moment was look him in the eyes and validate his human experience and the lessons that he'd learned in his addiction, like quick thinking. And so he took that and he paired that with his recovery, and he defied the odds. because he had everything he needed. And he finished law school, and today he's the chief data officer at an organization called Face It Together. And their goal is to use data and technology to innovate in the addiction and recovery space. So if you were going to summarize who David is, you could say that David is an addiction survivor, he is an ex-felon, and he's a data-driven executive. And those are not things we usually hear in the same sentence when we're talking about someone who struggled with an addiction. But that is the reality. With the way we hear about addiction in our culture, you'd be led to believe that few people ever recover. According to SAMHSA, there's about 23 million people that are struggling with an addiction today. But people do recover. And while we know that there are 23 million that are struggling, we also know that there are over 23 million people who have recovered from addiction today, and that is significant. It's significant because these people have essentially gone toe to toe in a fight against their brain's biology. We know that the brain is hijacked in addiction, and addiction wants it all, and it wants it 100% of the time. And now for that and for many reasons, recovering takes work. And it's hard work because people who do this, they battle their brain's biology day in, day out, and they win. And they win 24 hours at a time, despite the cravings, the urges, and for some, despite the professional happy hours where there's alcohol everywhere. And that takes dedication, and that takes hard work. And that is the kind of dedication and hard work that we as society should celebrate, not shun because it looks risky on a resume or it sounds intimidating bringing it into our professional world. And it's amazing to watch these people because they truly overcome anything. And many who have recovered have said that it was the hardest thing they had ever done in their life. So let me ask you this. Having done that, how much more tenacious might that experience make them in all other parts of their life? Think about how these people will be able to market your product, sell your product, represent your business, or overcome professional barriers that much better because of their experience in recovery. There's an organization called Creative Matters in Los Angeles, and they're a creative agency that's decided to employ individuals who are recovering from addiction. Now, they know that among this population, there is a risk of relapse. But what they've seen more often than not is that the individuals that end up working for them are grateful, they're honest, they're hardworking, they've got integrity, they're creative, and that gain far outweighs the risk of relapse. So this idea that individuals in recovery from addiction could become amazing employees and entrepreneurs, it's not far-fetched, because with 23 million people in recovery today, it's already happening, and it's happening all around us, all the time, in my company, in yours, and in companies that they started themselves. But these are the stories, the vibrant and amazing success stories that we in our companies often miss out on. Because think again of David, who's quick thinking from his addiction. When he paired that with his recovery, he was able to go to law school and he became an executive. And then there's a local entrepreneur in this town, and her name is Mattia. 9 years ago, Mattia was struggling with addiction, and she went to treatment, and she got sober. Well, last year in 2015, Mattia bought that business and became the CEO of the same treatment center she'd attended just years before. And she and I were talking one day about what her experience had been like, both in recovery and as an entrepreneur. And she said that from the time she was young, she always knew she wanted to own a business. She was ambitious despite her struggle with addiction. So early in her recovery, she was doing really well, and she started to apply to some large organizations in the area to move her resume forward. But she got turned down from every job. Now, I wonder if those companies knew that they were turning away a future CEO, someone that had that kind of potential inside of them. Because in less than 2 years of owning her business, Mattia has grown it rapidly. She started from owning one facility in the beginning of 2015. By the end of 2016, she will have grown that to a small enterprise of 4, will be managing over 20 staff, and will break the $2 million revenue barrier. What could she have done if given the chance or opportunity at one of those companies? And then there's the company that we all know, Uber. Well, Uber's 4th employee was hired on as an intern, and her name was Austin Geit. When she was hired on, she'd been in recovery from a drug addiction for several years. Today, she's been in recovery for over 11 years. And she has said that her recovery has helped her immensely in her success at Uber, specifically by learning how to take small steps to tackle big problems. And that's exactly what she did. Today, Austin is the head of global expansion at Uber, and she is one of their key executives. And she and her team have been charged with the effort to take Uber from the small startup company that it once was to the global company that it is today, with a valuation of over $60 billion. So what if we learned to value recovery for what it truly does to people? Because it transforms them. It takes the lessons that are learned in addiction, the resourcefulness, the scrappiness, the drive, and it radically transforms that into tangible skill in recovery. And in recovery, the values that keep someone sober 24 hours at a time are honesty, integrity, gratitude, among many others. And these are the same qualities that create great leaders, the entrepreneurs and employees that are able to take their street smarts and their skill from addiction and leverage that for great things in recovery today. There's an organization called Defy Ventures that calls that transforming the hustle. But my dad calls that his PhD from the School of Big Mistakes. I never thought that my dad could change. Not in a million years. I never thought that my dad would do anything great in his career or in his company. But today, despite everything that I ever believed, my dad has been in recovery for over 6 years, which is over 2,265 days, over 54,000 hours, over 3.2 million minutes, and over 195 million seconds of recovery. And it's been amazing to watch. And to make things even crazier, my dad and I are starting an organization together, and trust me, that is something that I never would have anticipated. But everything addiction took, recovery gave back. And recovery not only gave me back my dad, but it gave me a business partner, a mentor, and a board member for an organization that I founded called More Than an Addict. And our goal is to empower individuals recovering from addiction to dream big dreams and to pursue education, employment, and entrepreneurship. Because recovery is transformational. And what I've seen is that many who chase and run after recovery end up becoming powerhouses of human beings. People that get stuff done and are not afraid or hesitant to do it because that's what they've always had to do. When they were addicted, that's what they needed to do to survive. And when they got sober, they couldn't give up. They had to work hard. They had to stay focused because that's what it took to keep an active recovery going. And right now, our world is in the midst of a lot of change, and there's rapid innovation all around us. And these are the kind of people that we need, and we need them today. So the next time someone in recovery from addiction applies to your company and you see their resume pop up in the human resources department, don't just brush it aside. Or if you're an investor and someone in recovery walks in to pitch to you, do not dismiss them, because these are the people, the ones who have battled their brain's biology, whose recovery is fueled by principles of good character and hard work, and those who have literally transformed their human experience from addiction to recovery. They might be the ones you've been waiting for, the change maker, the leader, or the innovator. Because individuals who have recovered from addiction have this immense, untapped potential to become great employees and entrepreneurs. So let's bring them into our companies. Let's empower them in our communities, and we'll stand to be amazed. Thank you.